a dialogue. It was very strange. And we went through sort of like a paradoxical feeling of, well, half resisting. Well, I don't want to hear a song now. I'm very tired. But, well, I mean, I've heard yours. All right, well, let's hear it then. You know, that sort of thing. I went through that. And then we were going to go to the studio. And because of that, I felt we're both big-headed people. And so maybe we're going to fight like crazy over remix or this and that. You know, because we both have very definite ideas. And I'm sure that John felt that way too. John must have felt, well, can we really work together? But somehow we worked so well. And we were all prepared to sort of maybe have a difficult time, but don't you think so?
Yeah, it was the easiest session I've ever done, I think.
5 years is an awful long time. What sort of mental discipline did it involve resisting picking up a guitar?
Well, it wasn't a matter of resisting. The first half a year or a year, I had this sort of feeling in the back of my mind that I ought to. And I'd go through periods of panic because I was not in the NME or the Billboard or being seen at Studio 54 with Mick and Bianca. I mean, I didn't exist anymore. I got a little fear of that would come like a paranoia, and then it would go away because I'd be involved with the baby or involved with whatever other business that we were involved with. But that only lasted about 9 months, and then there was suddenly like it just went away. And I realized there was a life after death, you know, I mean, there was a life without it.
Did you enjoy that realization?
It was great. It was like, oh my God, and I would sit around thinking, what does this remind me of? What does this remind me of? I thought, this reminds me of being 15. I didn't have to write songs at 15. I wrote it if I wanted to, or I played rock and roll if I wanted to. I didn't have to do it. I didn't have some imaginary standard set up by me or some group of critics or whatever.
In other words, back to the days before the pressure started.
Yeah, so I sort of got back to that, and then that's when I suddenly could do it again with ease. Well, the most enjoyable thing for me, apart from putting them on the tape when you first put them, is the inspirational in the spirit. Because when the songs really come and you're not sitting down like a craftsman writing, I can do that. You know, you want a song about bananas for a movie, I could do that. Okay, you know, I'm quite capable of turning it out like that. I wouldn't enjoy it so much maybe, but I could do it on that level. But my joy is when you're like possessed, like a medium. I mean, I'll be sitting around and it'll come in the middle of the night or the time when you don't want to do it. You know, that's the exciting part. So I'm lying around, and then this thing comes as a whole piece, you know, words and music, and I'm thinking, can I say I wrote it? I don't know who the hell wrote it. I'm just sitting here and this whole damn song comes out. So you're like driven, and you find yourself over on a piano or a guitar, and you put it down because it's been given to you, or whatever it is that you tune into.
How did you find him during this period, Yoko?
Yes, he was doing that, and of course I was doing that too. We were very similar that way, you know. So when it comes, it comes.
But were you relieved that he had finally decided to lay down the guitar and rest?
We weren't suffering, or we weren't feeling worried when we were just relaxing. So there was no strong feeling of relief. In fact, the nicest thing about Double Fantasy was that while we were making, we were fully aware that we didn't have to make it. We were making it, we were enjoying it. But we could always go back to the other life, because the thing was that we now know that we have the other life as well. It's not like we have to always be in the front, you know.
Yeah, so that was the joy of it. It's the same joy now. Had it not been accepted, and by now it has been well accepted in England and America and various parts north and south of the world. But if it hadn't, we would have been hurt, but then one wouldn't have wanted to kill oneself or go back to the bottle because somebody didn't like your record or whatever. So knowing that gives you a kind of freedom that you have when you're younger, when you don't have a past to live up to. And that's the joy of it.
Were your friends very surprised that you adopted that stance as far as taking the 5 years off were concerned? I mean, was there any external pressure which people put on you and said, come on, John, what's happening?
There was a lot of it. That's why when you remember when you asked me, I think it was off mic before we started, you know, you got any English friends in town? Well, suddenly when Mick Jagger or David Bowie or Elton John came to town, I wouldn't respond, you know, because they'd always want me to go down to the studio or to the clubs, and I didn't want to get in there again. It's like birds of a feather. So I didn't want to go back in that pressure part of my life again. I wasn't ready to do that. And there was pressure from friends like that. And Mick did this whole spiel in The Observer in London, which I read in Tokyo, because we spent half the first 3 years of Sean's life, half the early 70s in Japan.